And we are back to talk about House of the Dragon, Episode 4. You like this one much better than you did... You like this one more than you did Episode 3.
Oh, I liked it a lot more, but I can understand how my tastes wouldn't necessarily translate to everybody else's tastes in the world. You know, like, this was one of those episodes where, you got to say, okay, the source material is ambiguous here, it's ambiguous here. How are they going to play this? How are they going to handle this? And so it was very interesting to see what choices the showrunners went with. So that made it very fascinating for me. I also thought there was a lot of interesting, ambiguous motivations from different characters where you can debate sort of, well, what was that person thinking? What was that person feeling here? What was that person feeling here? There was a lot to think about, with regards to each character and their feelings, and so it was very fascinating to me just watching all of the characters interact and their schemes and their feelings and their relations and why they did certain things and who is in love with whom and who just did something for the sake of doing something. And that was all very fun for me. I liked it a lot better than the last episode.
Well, hopefully there was no Viserys line that makes you go fucking crazy and people will get on your case forever for it, because
I'm sure once I go through the episode again, I'll find something. But this was my favorite episode so far. I can understand though that some people would find the episode slow and boring.
Fuck those people. Before we start, guys, as always, we're available on SoundCloud and iTunes, so consider checking us out on those platforms, and if you do, please leave us a review. It helps out a lot. Also, leave your comments down below. We might cover them in the next episode. Let's see here. So, I will be reading off the summary of the episode, and the audience doesn't know this, but before we started, Preston was researching a good chunk of this first part with Rhaenyra's suitors.
Okay.
I have to say, we already covered this in the stream, but cover it here as well. You made a very good point. So, starting off the episode, Rhaenyra travels to Storm's End, where, with Borman Baratheon's assistance, she meets and rejects countless suitors. Why the fuck she would need to be in Storm's End is weird, when she could have just been in Riverrun. Because I spot 4 houses. I think that that didn't look like the Trout of House Tully. It looked like either House Mooten or I can't remember which other fish sigils there are.
Fish oriented.
Yeah,
there's a few, but they're escaping me right now.
Right,
because there are a few that are fish related with the colors of the trident. Yeah,
I just need to go back and play Crusader Kings 2 Game of Thrones mod again. But I spotted one Riverlands house, either Mooten or excuse me, someone else. House Frey was there, and of course Bracken and Blackwood. And you wanted to go into the whole.
Well, so yeah, so this scene is directly from the source material, Fire and Blood. However, it's connected to some later source material, and they didn't connect it to the later source material. So what we see here is a bit different. But in the source material, in Fire and Blood, or in the Rogue Prince, it's in the Rogue Prince originally. She goes to the Trident, and that's why there's all the River Lords there. And I think Frey asks for her hand, and everybody calls him like a fool. So the Fool of Frey, and then the sons of Lord Bracken and Blackwood fight a duel. And that's what the Rogue Prince simply states, which is what we saw. We saw the sons of Lord Blackwood and Bracken fight a duel. However, in Princess and the Queen, that Blackwood and Bracken return. And we actually find out that they both survived the duel, and we find out which one won. It turns out the Bracken won the duel, and the Blackwood lost the duel.
Here it's the other way around.
They reversed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here it's the other way around, and it looks like he freaking gutted Bracken, right? It looks like Bracken's dead.
Well, he put his whole sword in the man's stomach, and the man's guts spill out. That's usually a death sentence.
Yeah. So, I don't. This is Samuel and Amos. I don't know if so. We don't know if Samuel and Amos will come back. But yeah, they switch things around. So now on this, I just don't think they connected it to later because it is a bit like, I mean, I guess they could have checked wikis and stuff, but it takes, reading that, you just be like, oh, the sons of Bracken and Blackwood like fought a duel. Let's just adapt that. And, they didn't know that, like, 100 pages later, these characters would return. So it's because they're nameless in the scene, and they're not nameless later on. It's a little odd, but yeah. So that's what's happened. They've so I guess we won't see Samwell and Amos later. Amos Bracken.
I'm sure we will going forward because it seems like Ryan Condal is determined to have book readers eat very good. But eat very well. But
is he gonna survive that gutting?
We'll probably get like a Bracken brother or something who's pissed or something.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I once again, we finally get to see Storm's End, but we don't get to see Storm's End. We get to see the interior, which is super cool, but we don't get to see the outside, which is bullshit. I'm sure we will.
Right, because we've seen the outside before.
No, we've never seen the outside of Storm's End.
Really? At Game of Thrones, we didn't see it?
We were supposed to have seen it in season 2, but because of budget constraints, we never saw it. And that was it. We've seen, I think, every single castle. Actually, no, we haven't seen Sunspear. We saw only the water
we haven't
gardens.
seen the sand ship. Yeah, we haven't seen the sand ship. And I guess we saw Highgarden. We saw Casterly Rock finally. We saw Winterfell.
Eyrie, River Run,
Eyrie. And
Sunspear and Storm's End are the only ones we haven't seen, which, come on, man, why the fuck would you put us in the interior of Storm's End but not give us, like, I'm sure we will see it when, certain events happen. I won't go into it, spoiler territory.
It didn't seem very majestic or large, It seemed like they were in I'm just kind of remembering like dirt floor and I don't know, but yeah, I don't even know why it was in Storm's End. It just seemed very silly. But
should have been River Run. He probably wanted to show
it's
off.
A minor, yeah. People say like, oh, Preston, I don't like when you nitpick. Like Storm's End is a nitpick. But my problems with episode 3 were not nitpicks. Those were like major structural problems. Okay, those were not people need to understand the difference between a nitpick and a
structural problem.
A major problem.
For those of you who are confused about this, we did the stream yesterday, and Preston got chewed out by several of the viewers who kept getting on about the Viserys comment.
Yeah. But, like I say, like them fucking up Storm's End or switching Blackwood and Brackwood, like these are tiny little things that are irrelevant in the grand scheme of the story.
Right.
It's just one of those things where you're like, huh, that's interesting. That's an interesting. So these are the nitpicks. This is by definition a little nit, but
of course,
yeah, exactly. It doesn't affect much at all. It doesn't make sense that she's in Storm's End. It doesn't make sense that she's in Storm's End at this moment of her journey, but who cares? It doesn't matter. She went on a journey. That's what's important. And she came back, and she was unsuccessful.
Well, the funny thing is, I keep thinking Ryan Condal is a huge fan of the Crusader Kings 2 Game of Thrones mod, because you actually can take a trip all over, and you can get you can meet people and marry them on this trip. And there is also a White Stag event in the mod as well. So, yeah.
The creators of Crusader King are insane fans. It's amazing, like whoever did the mod and all the stuff, all the details they put in.
They actually reached out to me a couple of years ago, I don't know if you remember, to ask to send a message to you if it's okay to put Chad Summerchild, I don't know if you remember that, in the mod. So
and I saw that Chad's in there. Yeah.
Chad Summerchild is in the CK2 Game of Thrones mod, so if you guys are interested in that, definitely go check him out. Obviously he's in the Vale. I don't know where in the Vale, but he's in there. Continue with the episode. She returns to King's Landing just as Prince Daemon arrives from the Stepstones on his dragon Caraxes. Daemon says he was named King of the Narrow Sea, but swears allegiance to King Viserys and hands over the crown. So this, I actually messaged you as this was going on. This in the books is different. It's actually attorney, and there's even like a whole artwork piece about it too in the think the world of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, they're having a huge tourney, and he descends upon the tourney. He kind of blindsides Viserys, and Viserys like hugs him in front of everybody, and so everybody's like cheering. And he does offer him his crown, but his crown is actually of like, they say he's dressed in gold and silver. So here it's like he's just got this like, you know, some sort of reed-looking crown that somebody like spent 30 minutes like weaving together.
You know what it looks like?
And
it looks like the Greyjoy crown that they put on Euron's head from Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean, in the same like like just kind of it looked like his crown was natural, like made of some sort of either reed or wood or driftwood or something. But I think he has like a gold and silver crown in Fire and Blood, and he offers the crown, and then Viserys gives the crown back. So he doesn't give up his kingship at that moment in Fire and Blood. But I think here he's just given it up. Like I don't think he's going to go back to the Stepstones, which he does do.
And then he leaves when his wife dies.
In Fire and Blood. And he leaves when his wife dies. Yeah. So here I think they're skipping that. So.
As the reunited brothers celebrate with a feast, Queen Alicent confides her loneliness to Rhaenyra, who misses their friendship. This is another thing I was telling you about, because in this episode, Alicent and Rhaenyra are all of a sudden friends. It's been a year, I think, since around a year, I think, since episode 3, because one of the performers says, the Princeling of 3. The Princeling turned 2 last episode, so about a year. And,
right.
I feel like we were missing a scene of them reconciling, because last episode...
I agree. I think they were trying to use that scene as their reconciliation, but honestly, you needed more than that to be your reconciliation. You know, something as important as Alicent and Rhaenyra's reconciliation should not have been off screen, and if they were trying to use that as their thing to count... it should have been longer and more emotional and more intense and more, you know, not this random, like, I'm going to spend 5 minutes on a bench. So, yeah, I definitely agree with you that we should have had more on that. I mean, they've really established Rhaenyra and Alicent as good friends in that first episode. And so, and how important and how big the betrayal was, that Alicent's betrayal when, you know, fucking your dad and stuff. So like it's you know, you definitely, I definitely wanted to see more.
Late at night, Rhaenyra, disguised as a boy, sneaks out with Daemon to explore King's Landing. They drink, attend a play, and visit a brothel. Daemon seduces a willing Rhaenyra. I like whoever wrote this in here, put it willing. But unable to perform sexually with her, he abruptly leaves. Rhaenyra, fully aroused... Instead, seduces Sir Christian Cole upon returning to the Red Keep. Seduces.
Okay, so
people are annoyed about that one.
Yeah, that's. I'm not saying that's not a possible interpretation of what the scene is, but I don't think it's the only interpretation of the scene. For instance, like it's not that I didn't hear many people coming to the conclusion that Daemon stopped because he couldn't get it up. I think that's a possible interpretation of the scene, but I don't think it's necessarily clear. Like, he could have stopped himself for a bazillion reasons, and I don't know if necessarily it's him not getting it up. It could have been, but I don't know if that's it. I don't know. Did you get that impression when he just kind of stormed off?
No, I didn't get the impression that he couldn't get it up. I got the impression that maybe he really didn't want to do this with her. Maybe he just realized he put her in a fucked up situation and he had to get out of there. What I don't understand is, why would he just leave her there? You escorted her here and you're leaving her here. That's fucked up. That's very fucked up.
Right. I mean, so I got the impression that the scene, you know, so you can look at it in a couple ways. Like, you could say, oh, maybe Daemon is a schemer and he wanted this whole thing to happen to Rhaenyra. But I think in some ways it was something about, like, he wants to connect with her, and he knows that, like, she needs to, like with Viserys, she needs to understand the world. She needs to understand what the small folk think of her. So he brings her to that play where she can see what the small folk think of her. That was an important education. And then he brings her to the brothel because he feels that like sexual education is important for her. She needs to see these things. And then my impression was, that he just has these mixed feelings about what's right and what's appropriate and what he should be doing. And he's making out with her, and then he realizes, crap, I can't do this. Like, this is wrong for whatever reason, or I'm taking advantage of her, or my brother's going to get mad, or I'm just not into it. Damon's nuts, but I didn't necessarily get the impression that he couldn't get it up. I think that's possibility. I'm not denying it as something that could have happened, but that's not the interpretation that I got. But I did see a lot of people in my comments say that was their interpretation. So, I mean, this is the thing about Ryan Condal. Ryan Condal's keeping like as much ambiguity that he removes from Fire and Blood, he places in his own ambiguity. So it's it's kind of neat. So, I accept that Damon's a weird dude. Damon's a weird dude. He's the rogue prince.
According to Rhaenyra, he went off and got with someone else, which Sir Otto's spies inform him about Daemon and Rhaenyra's exploits. Alicent overhears Sir Otto telling the king, and she privately questions Rhaenyra, who falsely claims she is still a virgin. So Rhaenyra is bullshitting here, but not exactly. She's telling the truth. She didn't fuck Daemon, but
let's go back and talk about Rhaenyra, because also that summary, which is kind of ridiculous, is like, oh, Rhaenyra aroused seduces Kristen Cole.
You wrote this.
She's not going to be staying aroused the entire trip back, okay? Her reasons for seducing Daemon, her reasons for seducing Kristen are not because she's horny in that moment and she's aroused. Her reasons for seducing Kristen seem to be that she felt liberated, that she wants to break the rules and she wants to like explore the world and know things, like I got that. Because coming back from the brothel and everything, that's gonna be like a half an hour walk. Like you're not still gonna be like horny after like a half an hour walk or an hour walk, however long it takes to go home, or whatever else she did that evening. So that's a weird interpretation. Like aroused, she goes home and sleeps with Kristen Cole. No, she slept with Kristen Cole because she liked Kristen Cole and she felt emboldened. But first off, it's super shitty thing that she did to Kristen Cole.
Because she's in a position of power and all that.
And he will die if people find out about it.
That's right.
They will kill him.
Gave me a lot of vibes between Arianne and... Well, not really Arianne, because... and Oakheart, kinda. I mean, it's not Marcello, but still...
Well, it's supposed to be that. I mean, like... Kristen Cole and Rhaenyra are first brought up in story under the story of Aerys Oakheart and Arianne. Like Aerys is thinking about that situation and she thinks about him and he thinks about him and all of those things. Yeah, he thinks about Lucamore the Lusty and stuff like that, but these are all factors in their mind. Like that story was fleshed out for A Feast for Crows, and then the story was completely retconned for Fire and Blood into something completely different.
Real quick for our non-book readers. So basically, if you recall in Season 2 of Game of Thrones, Tyrion strikes a deal with the Martells, and he sends Marcella off to Dorne. In the books, this happens as well, but Marcella is sent with Kingsguard, Aerys Oakheart, and he has a relationship with Doran Martell's daughter, Arianne. Arianne was not in the show, so that's why you don't see her. Doran only has one son, which is Trystane. In the books, he has 3 kids: Arianne, Trystane, and Quentin Martell.
And I think there are some people that were misunderstanding things because when I was talking about it in the stream, because actually when I brought up like various retcons, these are actually fairly obscure because even So originally, so Fire and Blood is as a story, like the Rogue Prince, is a retcon of what was first presented in the A Song of Ice and Fire series. And so the Dance of the Dragons began, what we know about it was actually just from the appendix of A Game of Thrones. So in the original appendix of A Game of Thrones, they list the Targaryen kings. And when they get to Aegon II, who we haven't even met as a character yet, they say that Aegon II was the younger brother of Rhaenyra by 1 year, and that they had a war. Okay? And that was it. So, like, they weren't even half siblings. They were only a year apart. Like, it was a completely different story. And which Fire and Blood has changed it completely. And the reason that they're only a year apart and that they're brother and sister is because that later, when A Feast for Crows comes, and I feel that George did have this plan, because in the original appendix for Game of Thrones, he does mention Dornish law, and how in Dornish law, women men and women inherit equally. So an eldest daughter will inherit rather than just the eldest male. And so I think he knew that he was going to do something to parallel the Dance of the Dragons. And so when A Feast for Crows came, we have a reverse situation where Arianne Martell is becoming the Queenmaker. We have a chapter called the Queenmaker, which is in opposition to Criston Cole, the Kingmaker. The Kingmaker is his moniker that he eventually gets because he has Aegon, the younger brother of 1 year, steal the crown of Rhaenyra, while Arianne Martell does the reverse. She has the sister who's 1 year older than Tommen steal the crown of the younger. So you have a very parallel situation that was very intentional from our author when doing A Feast for Crows. Sometime after A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, he decided to just retcon it all and threw all of those parallels out the window. And we have a completely different story now. Because now, as half siblings, there's different things to think about. The age difference is huge. There's all these complications with regards to the families and Maester conspiracies possibly, and all sorts of different stuff. It was originally a very simple tale. It was just a younger brother wanted to steal the store, and Criston Cole was a sexist, which Arianne Martell, like, that's all she knows him about. Like when she talked about some other sexist in the story, which is Anders Ironwood, she calls him Criston Cole Reborn, as if if you said the name Criston Cole, you'd just be like, oh right, sexist. Like that was the reduction of his character. Though they did say that he and Rhaenyra were lovers, So, but then the retcon in Fire and Blood is they actually, none of the points of view say that Rhaenyra and Criston were lovers. So that's kind of the weird retcon, that we go from a world where everyone accepts that they were lovers to a situation where you have multiple perspectives and none of them list them as lovers. So it's some interesting retcons that our author has done there, but they're pretty large with regards to the Dance of the Dragons. But yeah. So here they actually have them, doing the deed. Even though I think in Fire and Blood, none of the perspectives actually have them doing the deed. But it makes sense that they would do the deed. I think that's probably what happened.
Also, in the original material, wasn't there something supposed to be going on with Alicent and Daemon?
So that's that's another weird retcon. So in the original Rogue Prince, there's a rumor that Alicent and Daemon got together, and then that's removed when Fire and Blood came out. But in both versions, Alicent starts a rumor that Criston Cole might be sleeping with Rhaenyra, or she's subtle about it. She says, Sir Criston protects Rhaenyra, but who protects Rhaenyra from Sir Criston? That was kind of the statement that she made.
Sounds like a very catty thing. Sounds like catty thing to say. It's just Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, they're not friends in the book. They're never friends in the book. So, I mean, I kind of like the fact that they've added them as friends. It adds a new dynamic to the story. But
Yeah, I like that too.
they're not friends. Yeah, they have every reason to hate each other. It's more like wicked stepmother relationship with Rhaenyra and Alicent in Fire and Blood. But yeah, no. I mean, I would feel bad for Kristen if he wasn't such an asshole himself. So it's like she's really putting him in. But yeah, I mean, besides like putting Kristen in serious danger, she straight up convincingly lies to Alicent's face. Like,
she didn't. Allison thinks it's Daemon, but it's really Christian, and you could argue it wasn't really a lie, kind of a lie, not really.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to go back and like get the actual like situation of, did she ever say she didn't have sex in general, or she just said I didn't have sex with Daemon?
I believe she said I didn't have sex with Daemon. I'll have to go back and watch it again.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing. But she didn't. But at no point did she, hesitate or anything. She's just like straight eyes wide open. No, it's all good. It's all good.
The king angrily confronts Daemon, who never denies the accusation and proposes that he wed Rhaenyra. When he says, "Just wed her to me, and we will bring the House of the Dragon back to its glory." So Daemon believes that in order for House Targaryen to be back at full strength, Targaryen needs to go back to wedding Targaryen.
Right. Now, I always wondered if Daemon knew more, like he knew about bloodlines and what hatches dragons and things like that. Because, why else be interested in incest? Like, what's the I mean, is it just some sort of broad, abstract, like, kind of Nazi idea of like pure blood and and strength? But like, why is he so interested in marrying in the family, while the other characters like are not necessarily that interested?
You can also tell that Daemon's super into the whole Valyrian supremacy above the common man type of situation.
It's odd because even Lionel Strong like makes those comments. He keeps saying, "Oh, you'd have, they have pure Valyrian blood," and you're like, "Why is that important? Like, what's the next step that you're taking? Like, pure Valyrian blood, so I can hatch dragons? Pure Valyrian blood, so I can fulfill prophecy?" I mean, there's a couple different reasons why pure Valyrian blood might be important, but he never actually like says why, because I mean, imagine if somebody gave that like rationale to you. They're like, Carmine, you can marry a Brazilian, and then you'll have pure Brazilian blood, and your children will have pure Brazilian blood, and you'd be like, why does that matter? Like, why does that matter? What's the next step? What's the next step? What are you saying, Lionel? Do you know something about hatching dragons that I don't? Like, I always want to know. Like, but yeah, they dance around it. Like, yeah.
Knowing Daemon only wants the marriage to gain the crown, the king exiled his brother back to the Vale. To avoid scandal, Viserys orders Rhaenyra to marry Sir Laenor Velaryon, and the king dismisses Sir Otto as his hand, realizing Otto has always manipulated him for his own personal gain. The king sends Grand Maester Mellos to give Rhaenyra moon tea in case she is pregnant. I love the scene of when Viserys is just like piecing it together.
Yeah. But also what's cool about that scene, and I do like that scene a lot, is it's not only a little bit of Viserys piecing together, but also keep in mind it's Viserys shielding Rhaenyra, because it's Rhaenyra's request that Otto leave, based on the switching of the heirs. But he puts forward different reasons, right? He puts forward an implication that maybe Otto murdered his father, and that the implication, the true one, of that he pushed his daughter on him.
That was an implication. I didn't catch that. I didn't get that feeling.
He said something about,
a burst belly. That's how his dad died.
A burst belly. Yeah, my dad died, and then within days, you were
Hand of the king.
You all of a sudden were hand, and you had so much like rise in such a fast amount of time. You know, it was very suspicious. You know, it sounded like he was claiming that he had something to do with his father's appendicitis.
To me, it's ended more like he was happy at how quickly he got to rise in station. That's what it sounded like to me. I didn't get the implication that Viserys thought there was foul play.
I mean, yeah, there's certainly not foul play with Otto in Fire and Blood. He's not even in town, but in Fire and Blood, Otto's brought in. Again, there's a retcon between the Rogue Prince and Fire and Blood, but yeah, there's a delay because they have the Council of 101, and then after the council, Otto Hightower is brought in. But I suppose he could be at court. I mean, we don't know where Otto's living. Maybe I forget if it says he brought him from Old Town, but whatever the case, you know.
Well, we actually do get to see some of the Hightower household guard, and they have their own special armor, so. You know, I'm sure he has a place in King's Landing.
You love the armor,
dude.
I love how it's like you notice all the armor.
It's important because like it just shows the show is not being lazy with it and giving them like bullshit generic.
It's like the green M&M thing with Aerosmith. You heard about this?
No, I have not. What is this?
Aerosmith would have whenever they had a contract. In the middle of the contract, they would say that
only green M&Ms in the bowl.
And yeah, only green M&Ms need to be sorted out, and everybody's like, "That's insane." And there was this rumor that they just like the green M&Ms because it made them horny or something, because they believe that green M&Ms made them horny. But it was not. It was an oversight issue. They were like, if these people took the time to read the contract and then took the time to fulfill this random little thing in the middle of the contract, then that speaks well on the other things in the contract.
That's a good one. I like that.
And their detail, on other things in the contract.
That's smart. So, I like that. I just like the armor. I just like these. I like the little details. It helps make the world, you know, more believable and more livable, and you know, it helps it make it better, personally speaking. And like we said on the stream, this is the first appearance of Moon Tea at the very end of the episode. For those of you who haven't read the books, you drink it, and it's just, you lose the baby. It's essentially an abortion in a cup. It's Westeros' version of it. And this is, excuse me, this is a huge plot point in the books. It's a thing that happened with Lysa, and I believe it's a thing that happened with Marjorie.
Marjorie, yeah. Lysa and Marjorie have the two big Moon Tea plots. I mean, there might be a potential of one with Asha as well, but we'll see. Yeah.
For Marjorie, Marjorie gets Moon Tea for one of her either handmaidens or cousins. Who was it?
Well, we're not sure. Like, you know, so she has 3 cousins who come to King's Landing with her, and it's subtle. It's very subtle when you read the Cersei chapters, but all of these men are hanging out with Marjorie and her cousins all the time. And Cersei interprets it as all of these men find Marjorie so beautiful and they all worship her. And Cersei's jealous of Marjorie for a number of reasons. Merryweather. Taena Merryweather tells her that they're all swooning over Marjorie. But if you actually pay attention to the other testimonies of, say, the Kettle Blacks, they'll talk about how like everybody's coming around to see the cousins, which kind of makes more sense because Marjorie's married and the cousins aren't. So of course they're going, like, these guys are going to be like coming over to talk to the cousins because these are ladies that might get married. And so we have 3 cousins, and we're not sure which cousin. And then we know that Marjorie was requesting Moon Tea for one of them, and we're not really sure which one. There's different arguments on which ones would be receiving it.
But the Moon Tea ties in plot wise to get Cersei to accuse Marjorie of infidelity.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. Even though it's likely one of her cousins' infidelities. Yeah.
So yeah,
that she was asking. Yeah.
Well, Moon Tea finally makes its appearance. So So we have Moon Tea, Storm's End. We have several of the Bracken. We have the Bracken Blackwood feud. We have the Streets of Silk, which I think get their name finally. That gets name dropped. We have the reappearance.
Oh, but actually, going back to the Moon Tea, I don't want to go. Just really briefly, I'm sorry to
No,
bring
go
it
ahead.
back, but I remember in an interview with Ryan Condal where they asked him about something, and he said, "Yeah, we filmed all of this before the repeal of Roe v. Wade, but obviously people can watch this and get a lot of interpretations out of it that might relate to modern day politics, even though they did it before." And so at first I was a little at first I read that, I was like, oh, because it's generally about women's rights. And I was like, oh, actually, no, it's much more specifically about abortion. And so now it kind of like it's coming in that the Moon Tea is a relevant thing, specifically with regards to abortion, and that he had actually mentioned that in an interview. But anyway, continue. What was the next thing you were saying?
No, I'm just saying how, book fans are eating well lately with Ryan Condal.
Yeah.
It's not that Dave and Dan didn't give us a lot of, book-related stuff. It's just that they were more preoccupied with adapting the story and making sure everything fit.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Condal is taking his sweet time because we are about to hit 5 episodes in, and only now we're getting, Rhaenyra and Laenor's wedding. And I'm wondering how... And I look at the episodes here on Wikipedia, and episode 10 is called The Black Queen. And I was actually discussing this with Glidus privately a while back. Glidus believes that the final scene of House of the Dragon episode 10 season 1 will be both Rhaenyra and Aegon II being crowned at the same time, going back and forth between scenes, which means, and he might be right, episode 9 is called The Green Council, which, I don't want to spoil this for non-book readers, but Ryan Condal is taking his sweet time getting to the meat and potatoes of Dance of the Dragons, because by the time we hit episode 6 or 7 in Game of Thrones, we already have the beginning of the War of Five Kings.
Well, it's funny how it's the process is the reverse, like D&D's process, where you have this big bulk of source material, and you're like, well, what are we going to cut? And then Ryan Condal, you've got this these fortune cookies of source material, and how are we going to expand it? Right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny, like how little one guy has and how he has to add meat to the bone, and how the other guy's got this huge feast, and he's like, well, what are we going to save? I mean, both are difficult jobs, and I think both did a really great job. If we compare our 2 season 1s. But yeah, they are very different jobs.
Well, people keep saying this already, that so far the episodes we've seen in House of the Dragon are already better than season 1. You guys got to stop saying that. Season 1 of Game of Thrones, my personal opinion, is the gold standard of how you adapt a book to a show. Remember, this is not... Yes, they're both Fire and Blood and A Game of Thrones, the book. They're both books, of course, but Fire and Blood is a history book. Ryan Condal is working with, as Preston said, scraps here. So it's kind of, until the season is over, it's kind of unfair to compare the two. And I would also love, in another universe, to see how Ryan Condal would have handled Game of Thrones in his own way. I would have loved to have seen what he could have done with it.
Yeah. But I love how it's just 2 different, completely different styles. And completely different ways of handling stuff, like one group that's like, no, we've got to really worry about cutting things down and pacing and throwing in, the right story beats. And I think D&D did a great job with season 1, and Ryan Condal being this ultra fan who's like, no, we got to get all the details right. We got to get this detail right. We got to throw this in. It's I don't think he's as talented as D&D were in pacing with season
I agree.
1. But I think he's creating a great show in a completely different way. It's actually even hard to compare the shows because they're so different. I mean, just the time skips. Like the time skips are so hard.
But they're well done here. Very well done.
They're well done. Obviously they're not going to be perfect because the time skips can't be. Like I say, we brought up the Alicent and Rhaenyra reconciliation, and you're like, well, how do you deal with that? Like with the time skips and everything, and something got lost in the translation. But they're doing their best. They're doing their best with those time skips.
By the way, people keep complaining. So I've noticed in my comment section in some of my videos, people kept complaining about the time skips. Guys, we had time skips in the first season of Thrones and the second season for a good chunk of Thrones. The only difference here is that the characters are actively telling you, "Oh, I haven't seen you in 4 years. Oh, it's he's 2 now." Like you're actually getting in normal conversation, "I haven't seen my brother in 3 years." Like you're actually getting in fluid normal conversation how long it's been. And also it's maybe
people really forget that like Dany went from impregnated to birthing in how many episodes? Like, was it 3?
Ned had been in King's Landing for a year, and you didn't even know that. Like, a lot of people did not. Oh, wow, it was a year? I thought it was a couple of months. No, it was a year. He was there for a year in those 10 episodes.
It definitely feels like 2 weeks when you watch the. Definitely feels like 2 weeks when you watch Game of Thrones.
But I'll also acknowledge that it's kind of very important for Ryan Condal to ensure the audience knows that there's been time skips, because Rhaenyra, young girl, when we start the episode, when we start episode 1, and then by the time we get to 4, Daemon hasn't seen her in 3 to 4 years, so she's 18, 19. Yeah. Very important to establish. You don't want the FBI coming knocking on our doors with this bullshit.
Right, so. Right. I suppose that's kind of funny because because Alicent is clearly, as a young girl, is clearly like having sex, but it's off screen. And they didn't put her on screen having sex until this episode where she's like 18 or 19, right? Because it's very important. It's very important that we're not going to show that on screen.
His back is so fucked up. Has the infection completely gone crazy and is just destroying him, or is that scabs?
There must be something else going on. Because when he first made that comment, the first time we get the sore on him, and the Maester's like, I'm not sure what this is, and he's like, "Oh, it's a cut from the throne," and they're like, "Okay," and then they cauterize it, and it's like it doesn't really make sense that there'd be a cut underneath his clothes on his back. I mean, maybe they're all cuts from the throne.
If the swords were fucking super sharp or Valyrian steel, goddamn, they're cutting through his clothes. I'll take that, but at least and we've seen back shots of Viserys. At least show us some back shots of his clothes a little ripped or something. Make it believable that the throne is cutting him. But what the hell?
It might be something else. Maybe he has some other ailment. And he thinks it's a cut.
In the preview for episode 5, Alicent is watching him come back to the Red Keep, and he collapses a little, and it startles her. So yeah, and Otto knows.
Yeah, they do. They have a death fake out scene, where he's lying on the ground or something, but he clearly is not dying yet. One interesting thing that somebody brought up was the moon tea and who sent it. We're led to believe that Viserys sent his daughter the moon tea. However, in the previous scene, he is told by Alicent that Rhaenyra didn't even have sex, and he seems to believe her. So why would he send the tea? So the idea is that maybe the Maesters sent the tea and that the Maesters were watching?
I was kind of, I don't know why, I was kind of under the impression that maybe it was either Christian Cole or Alicent.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but we also get this kind of impression that Rhaenyra was getting spied on.
I didn't get that.
They're spies.
I didn't get the impression that they were being spied on when they had sex.
It's just the camera angles are kind of weird, peeping Tom camera angles. But even if they're going to be spied on, it's not going to be from those locations. But we know that the Red Keep is filled with holes in the wall where either someone like Varys or Cheese walks around in the walls. It's funny because the first time I read A Feast for Crows, and when Cersei burns the Tower of the Hand. I remember feeling like, oh, what an absolute waste of like time and effort to like burn this tower. But now that like I've had time to go over the series and everything, I realize like so many problems happen because of the secret passages that that Cersei should have burned down the entire castle and started over again, because I mean it certainly would have saved Kevin's life.
Yeah.
Had she burned down the entire castle. But there's so many just problems with the damn secret passages. Oh my gosh. Like Cersei, it's just one of those situations like when Cersei's right, she's right. Sometimes Cersei is right.
I like how we are seeing the secret passages in the House of the Dragon, and like I said, it's gonna all lead to blood and cheese all day, every day. I'm still a little skeptical on your claim that Larry Strong might be one of them.
Oh yeah, I mean, we'll see. This is me like, betting money on the house. I'm like putting it all on putting it all on black. Like I'm just like, it's Laurie. Cheese is Laurie Strong. Like,
I wonder if Ryan Condal thinks the same thing, and he might allude to it.
Maybe it's just one of those things where. I just know that like not that many people have done really, really close readings of Fire and Blood. And so when I sort of like come out with these like Fire and Blood ideas, I don't know how many people like naturally come to that conclusion. When I started going through like the overanalyzing House of the Dragon and going line by line and then reading the comments, like certain things like, people are on board with. They're like, yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I think you're reading that right. And then other times people kind of say like, nah, I think you're pushing that. So like I said, I was really surprised last episode when Ryan Condal or whatever writers like successfully identified that Viserys and Daemon politically married into the Vale in order to have an army to fight against the North. I was like very impressed with like that level of reading. But at the same time, like, I guess they messed up Blackwood and Bracken in this episode, but everything has their limits. Everything.
Change things up a little is fine.
Change things up a little. Who knows?
But no, before we wrap it up, I actually really like this episode as well. I feel like I like episode 3 slightly better, but I've only seen this. I need to watch this at least 2 more times.
My least favorite episode is your favorite?
No, I wouldn't. I need to rewatch this at least 2 more times for me to have like the definitive one on it. But I think I like episode 3 just a little more. This one was fun too, very fun. I would argue this is my close second. My second favorite by a very close margin. I'm sure I'll probably like it or maybe dislike it on a couple more rewatches, which I'm going to do after we record this.
Yeah, it always happens. You watch something the first time and you really like it, and then you sort of rewatch it and the holes come out.
The one thing I do miss the most, though, and I said this in my review, the one thing I miss the most is us going to all these different places, which we did in episode 3. We traveled to Kingswood, obviously to the Stepstones. Here, we were in Storm's End for like 5 minutes, sure. And it's not that I hate King's Landing, but I feel as though we're always in fucking King's Landing. I want to see other places. It feels like the characters are prisoners in King's Landing, not that they live there.
Do you remember when Game of Thrones first came out and everyone mocked Game of Thrones for it being just people walking around the gardens conspiring? And that was like the complaint, that there wasn't enough different scenery, that everyone was just walking around gardens conspiring. When in fact there were tons of different locations. At the Wall,
Winterfell, we're on the road.
Right, Derry, Essos, like there were so many locations. It was ridiculous to have that accusation. But now we actually do have that situation where, like, yes, there's the Godswood, there's the throne room, there's There's the miniatures
If
room.
I didn't know any better, it almost looks like House of the Dragon doesn't have the budget to go to several locations, but they do. They do have the budget to go to all these fucking locations. HBO gave them almost an unlimited budget, and you know they did. Because HBO was willing to spend $30 million on one episode of a pilot they decided not to even release. So yes, they have the budget to go all these places, but the story doesn't really call for it, which I think is a shame, because I really would have liked to see if more places, and I'm sure we will. We're only on episode 4. I'm sure we'll go to multiple locations, but off the top of my head, besides Storm's End, the Kingswood, and the Stepstones, Driftmark, and I'm out.
Yeah, for inside of a room, we never see anything in Driftmark.
Well, no, true, but
we went to Dragonstone. We went to Driftmark. We went to one room inside Driftmark.
We will see Driftmark, I'm assuming, in the next episode, because in the episode 5 preview, it looks like Viserys personally is going to Driftmark to ask for the match between Laenor and Rhaenyra. But okay, so those 5 places. I don't even really count Dragonstone because, but those 5 places, cool. I don't want to see the places around the Crownlands. I want to see, the North. I want to see, I want to see more of Dorne. I want to see all these other places as well. And doesn't seem like we're going to get that anytime soon. I can't see it happening in this season, at least.
No, I mean, I guess we might go to the Vale next episode.
Briefly. I doubt we'll stay there for too long.
To watch
Rhea Royce die.
Rhea Royce. We fall off a horse. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of anything else that happens. Driftmark, Dragonstone, King's Landing. I can't think of much else that happens until the war, and then we go back to Storm's End when the war starts. I will say that the time jump in Fire and Blood, there's a rather large time jump from the last 10 years go by really fast. And we don't hear very much on it. But so that'll be the biggest time jump when we actually jump to the start of the war. But then again, they've advanced a lot of the events in time, so to make people older. But then they have to advance them again in order to have people grow up. So we'll see about these jumps. But
I'm also very, very, very nervous about the biggest time jump that we're going to get after episode 5, because I think after episode 5, that's when we get older characters, and we also get the introduction of Alicent's children, other than being babies, and we also get the introduction of Rhaenyra's kids, and then we have a whole. I feel like it's going to become a brand new show.
Yeah. Yeah,
because we have to introduce this whole slew of new characters, and we have to give them personalities. So I can kind of understand where a bulk of those episodes will go. It'll go to building up those people.
I do think that. So right now, young Alicent and young Rhaenyra are very likable characters, and they're very likable actors. But it's always a risk. Are we going to like the new actors as much? I don't know.
We'll have to see. And on that note, Preston, you mind if you wrap it up here?
All right. Sounds good.
Guys, thank you for joining us. We'll see you all on the next episode. Have a good one.